Chapter 30, redistribution of income. What means about redistribution of income? We will start talking about redistribution of income because there's a gap between the rich and the poor. So the income is not balanced. Things are not in the right way. So there's gap between those, there are gaps between the income earners. So that's why government has to redistribute it. So let's go down and find out. Income inequality. In the market economy, in the market economy, individuals receive different levels of income. For example, in France, the shop assistant might earn 17,600 euro per annum, equivalent to the national minimum wage. A teacher might earn 48,000 euro, and the company director might receive 2.4 million per annum. The difference here between the company director, who is the high income earner, and the shop assistant, who is the low income earner, is considerable. Many would also argue that the difference between the teacher's income and that of the shop worker is also significant. However, what is clear is that income is distributed very unevenly in this example. In most countries in the world, the distribution of income is very unequal. So, basically, there's income inequality, which is about differences in income that exist between different group of people. So that makes some to be more richer and some to be poorer. That is the point they're making there. I think it's clear. So we just go down and see. So we have to go to what the causes of inequality, I think. Right?
There's
okay.
absolute poverty.
No, hold on, please. Sorry.
No, before that, there's this.
Yeah, I saw it already. Sorry. These huge differences in income may arise as, yeah, that's what I just said now. We're going to have different reasons for income inequality, does it? So what are the reasons why we have income inequalities? Number one, workers with natural talent, a good education, valuable work experience, or more can offer labor in the market, or who can offer labor in the market where there is a shortage of qualified labor, we tend to earn more. So the first reason why there's huge difference between income between people is that there are some people, they have natural talent, they have quality education, they have experience in work field, they have better human capital, they have something to offer than others. So as a result of that, they become more employable than others. So they attract high income than those who don't have this type of things. That's the first point. Is it clear? Two, people who do not work, such as pensioners, receive lower income than those in employment. Those that are economically inactive will not get more than those that are economically active. So the gap is increasing, is widening. Three, the extent to which a government redistributes income through taxes and welfare payments is influential. So how do government redistribute income? Government will tax some people. Is government taxing the rich more than the poor? Or government is making it, we have progressive taxation, and we have progressive taxation, and what's the third one? I think I forgot. There's a third one, which strike balance. That means you tax accordingly. We get the same tax. We get the same rate of tax. So how government taxes people, income earners, also determined, because if government is taxing the rich more than the poor, it means government will be able to pay from government will be able to use the revenue that is increased or that is being gained from the poor to redistribute to those who are not getting like not getting like the rich. So maybe through social benefits, through subsidies. So government will be able to redistribute income to that, but it depends on how government redistribute its income and how government come up with its tax policies. The last one, people who own assets such as property, shares and capital will enjoy additional income such as rents, dividends and interest, respectively. So what you own in terms of factors of production, you have these things will generate wealth, and as a result of that, you become better than those who don't have these things. So having property, having assets generates more income than those who don't have it. So that can also bring about income inequality. We move on. Absolute poverty. When we talk about absolute poverty, we said the unequal distribution of income in countries often means that a proportion of the population live in poverty. This means that people are living in an environment where their needs are not fully met. However, there are two definitions of poverty. One of these is absolute poverty. This is where people try to survive in an environment where even their basic needs are not adequately met. People living in absolute poverty may be deprived of food, shelter, safe drinking water, sanitation facilities, education, basic health care, and information. So we call it absolute poverty. We call it absolute poverty because you cannot afford the basic needs, such as information. Information should be everywhere. You can't afford it. You can't afford drinking water. You can't afford food, shelter, a place to sleep, a clothes to wear. You can't afford these things. This is absolute poverty. Is it clear?
Yeah.
And the second type of poverty is relative poverty. Go down, please. A second definition of poverty is relative poverty. This is always present in society. Relatively poor people are to be found at the bottom end of the nation's income scale. Their incomes will fall short of the levels needed to provide an average living standard in their country where they live. There is no precise measurement of relative poverty. So for relative poverty, is about some people better off than others. They are all in poverty, but some have better living standard than another. That is what relative poverty is.
Better living situation.
Than another. So that is what relative poverty is. But when there's relative poverty, it means the standard of living is far from the normal living standard within the economy. That is what relative poverty is about. So let's go down. The second paragraph, they said relative poverty will vary between different countries. This is because the median income level in a particular country determines relative poverty. Each country is likely to have a different median income level. Generally, richer countries will have higher median income level than poorer countries. Generally, people are considered to be living in poverty if they are unable to attain the average living standards in their society. The first, the median, that means the average people living in poverty, the average, in a country in a rich country, you have few poor. That's why we call it a rich country. But in a poor country, you have few rich people there. Do you get it? So not that the poor country does not have rich people, but there are few. So the average, it's in a poor country, the median average of people there are rich people.
Yeah.
But in a rich country, the median average of people there will be poor. Do you get the point I'm making?
Yes.
So for relative poverty will also change over time. This is because income levels change over time. They usually rise. Therefore, if an individual receives an increase in income that is higher than the average increases, that individual might move out of poverty altogether or further away from the poverty line. So for relative poverty, it can take you can be out of poverty, become middle class, or at least average income earner, or you move away from the bottom of the poverty line.
Yeah.
So the point is, when it is relative poverty, things can easily change than absolute poverty. But for absolute poverty to improve, it has to go to relative poverty. Do you get it? So relative poverty is in between getting better or going back to absolute poverty. I think it's clear. Reasons to reduce poverty and inequality. So poverty is not, it's evil. It's not something that should happen. So what are the reasons why we must find a way to reduce? One thing is this: you cannot eradicate poverty, but you can, what do we call it? We can reduce it, but they don't use reduce, they use we can alleviate it. Poverty alleviation. You can alleviate it. That means you can move some people away from it. Some people, they won't, based on their own negligence or carelessness, they won't leave poverty. So that's why they cannot be eradicated, but it can be alleviated. I think you get my point there. So let's see anyway. Reasons to reduce poverty and inequality. One, meet basic needs. Just under 10% of the world's population still live in absolute poverty, according to the World Bank. This means that around 700 million people struggle to survive. In some countries, many people are undernourished. For example, in Zambia and the Central African Republic, 47.8% and 47.7% of the population, respectively, do not have enough to eat. They are unable to consume enough calories per day to sustain an active and healthy life. In some cases, people in absolute poverty are starving to death. Young children are particularly at risk. If possible, okay, I'm just going to the last paragraph here. If absolute poverty can be completely eliminated, the basic needs of people will be met. This would avoid the loss of life from starvation and help children to grow up healthily. One of the first reasons why we have to reduce or eliminate poverty, if possible, is that poverty is a situation that does not that makes people to have inability to get the basic food, clothing, and shelter. So if it is eliminated, it means people will be able to afford food, clothing, and shelter. So that's the first reason why poverty must be reduced, is that it brings about people having the affordability for food, clothing, and shelter. That's the first reason. Raise living standards. That's the second reason. If poverty can be reduced, living standards across the world would rise. If absolute poverty is eliminated, the basic needs of people would be met, and clearly their living standard would improve. However, average living standards would also increase if relative poverty were reduced. Although relative poverty will always exist, it is still possible to bring people out of relative poverty. It is also possible to improve the living standards of those living in relative poverty. This is because as the nation's income rises, the median income will also rise. Therefore, many of those living on less than 60% of their median income will still have a higher income and a better living standard. The first point here before I go to the next paragraph is that if poverty is eliminated, it improves people's living standard, especially when it comes to relative poverty. Relative poverty is easier to reduce than absolute poverty, because if it is relative poverty, it means that individual or those people in that category have a source of income. But the source of income is not just enough. That is what relative poverty is. So if it is not enough, the government could find a way to increase it. So if government if government succeeded in improving their level of income, it increases their income level, and they will be able to afford those things that they can only afford less of, and that improves their living standard. That is the point they are making. So relative poverty will exist, but it is easier to reduce it than absolute poverty, because relative poverty means that individual has a source of income, but it's not just enough. So that means not enough can be adjusted to become enough. That is the first paragraph. Clear? The second paragraph, even with relative poverty, ill health and early death are still problems. Studies show that people living in relative poverty are more likely to get ill and have a low life expectancy. This may be because those living in relative poverty have poor housing, less nutritious diets, and reduced access to healthcare. People living in relative poverty also consume fewer goods and services such as vehicles, consumer durables, entertainment services, and education. They may also have low self-confidence, less control over their lives, and less choices. Relative poverty is also still a problem. Why is it still a problem? Because those in relative poverty would not have accessibility to better healthcare, better education, and not having access to better healthcare and better education reduces your lifespan. So they might, and it also takes away your confidence level, because you're not educated. You lack certain qualification to stand within some group of people. So you feel inferior. And feeling inferior is also a disease that could lead to depression. So people in relative poverty lacking accessibility to certain things of life might be a problem, and they have short life expectancy. That's the second concept. The third paragraph. Are you there, please?
Yeah.
If reducing poverty can raise living standards, more people would be educated. This would help to boost global economic growth. As a result, there will be more employment, more income, and more tax revenue for the government. This could be spent improving public services for everyone. If poverty can be reduced, living standard would raise. And when living standard raise, it means income level would have increased. Increasing income level would mean that government taxes, government revenue from taxes would increase in terms of income, in terms of corporation tax, because firms will be making more revenue. They'll be able to pay more taxes. Income of individuals would have improved. They will also be able to pay taxes. As a result of that, government will have more revenue to itself to finance public expenditures for public services. And when public services are improved, poverty would reduce, because it means government is coming up with subsidies, making goods and services affordable for those who are less privileged. So they'll have income to spend. So that is all about that. Is it clear? Another reason is about ethical. Many people think that poverty and income inequality should be reduced for ethical reasons. This means they believe it is the moral duty of both people and government to help reduce poverty. It could be argued that the sacrifice made by a relatively better off it could be argued that the sacrifice needed by the relatively better off to reduce poverty is very small indeed. Take the two families in getting started. No, we're not going to talk about that. I'm just going to explain. Ethics are moral. So, and what is moral?
Moral, it's like
Moral is the principle to know what is right or wrong. So moral is the principle to know what is right or wrong. So they felt it is the moral responsibility of government and people who are wealthy to take people away from poverty, because it takes them nothing to do that. That is the point they're making there. So if government takes that responsibility and the wealthy people take that responsibility to reduce poverty, it will make the society a better place. It will even help the wealthy people and the government than harming them. That is the point they are making there. I'm going to go to the next paragraph then, though. So many people are concerned by the vast inequalities of income around the world. Some are even disgusted. The stories and well, all in all, ethical living is about government taking responsibility and wealthy people taking responsibility to find a way, ensuring that people are out of poverty, so that income inequality would reduce. That is the point. Is it clear? Good. We move on. Government intervention to reduce poverty and income inequality. Oh, these are the type of taxes I was talking about. Are you there? Yeah, and the third one is proportional tax. We have progressive, regressive, proportional. Proportional. I just remember now. So let's move on anyway. So the other said, government intervention to reduce poverty and income inequality. If government has to reduce income inequality or reduce taxes, government doesn't have any money anywhere. It's through revenue from taxes. So that means government will have to work on its tax policies, on its fiscal policy. We call it fiscal policies. So we start, which is taxes, subsidies. So we start with taxes here, progressive tax. A progressive tax is one that places a burden of taxation more heavily on the rich. That is, those who can afford to pay. A progressive tax is a tax where the proportion of income paid in taxes rises as the income of taxpayer rises. So one way to increase government revenue and reduce income inequality, or to reduce the gap between the rich and the poor in terms of income, is through progressive tax. For progressive tax, it means the tax burden is on those that are rich. So if you continue to become richer, you pay more taxes. So tax burden is always on those that are richer. That is what progressive tax is. The more money you make, the more tax you pay. That is progressive tax. Is it clear? We have regressive tax. In contrast, a regressive tax system places the burden of the tax more heavily on the poor. With such a system, the proportion of income paid in tax actually falls as income rises. So taxes on spending such as VAT tend to be more regressive. So for regressive tax, the tax burden is always on the poor.
Yeah.
Why? Especially when it comes to value-added taxes on consumption.
Yeah. So
if the cost of food is $2 and we have to pay a tax of 0.5,
yeah,
that means we have to pay 2.5. A rich person would afford that. But what about a low income earner? So both the rich and the poor will be paying the same tax burden,
yeah,
but does not weigh heavily on the rich than the poor.
Yeah.
That is regressive tax, where the tax burden weighs heavily on the poor than the rich. That is what we call regressive tax. Is it clear?
Yes.
So yeah, what it means is that government doesn't put into consideration that there's gap between the rich and the poor. But with this type of tax, with regressive taxes, the gap between the rich and the poor widens.
Yeah.
It increases.
Yeah.
We move on. Redistribution through benefit payments. That's another way which government can use to redistribute income. In most developed countries, government have a welfare system which is used to redistribute income in favor of the poor. Most systems involve using tax revenue to make direct payment to those on low income and those who cannot work at all. For example, in many European countries, payments are made to the unemployed, the disabled, the sick, single-parent families, the elderly, and those on very low incomes. These payments help to boost the incomes of some of the most at-risk people in society. We call them disadvantaged people. Such payments help to reduce both absolute poverty and relative poverty. In countries where large numbers of people live in absolute poverty, there are rarely any system that redistributes income in this way. This is mainly because the government in these countries do not have enough money. GDPs are low, so the tax revenues collected are also low. Redistribution through benefit payments. Here, government comes up with a welfare system, social welfare system, where they have statistics for disabled, for elderly people, for unemployed, and so on. But these people are economically inadequate or they are disadvantaged. So the government will find a way to ensure that they have income to be able to afford the basic. That is the distribution through benefit payments. Is it clear? We'll move on, please. No. Investment in education and healthcare. That's the next one, right? One route to reducing poverty is through education. Clearly, if people are educated and are able to develop a range of skills, such as reading and writing, numeracy, communication, analysis, problem solving, evaluation, critical thinking, and language, they are more employable. However, according to UNICEF, I know. Schooling has other, I know. Do you know what UNICEF is?
Yeah.
Okay. Schooling has other benefits. Education will give the next generation the tools to fight poverty and conquer disease. School also offers children a safe environment with support, supervision, and socialization. Do you understand this point, or you want me to explain them?
No.
Great. Here they learn life skills that can help them prevent disease, including how to avoid AIDS and malaria. Children may receive life-saving vaccines, fresh water, and nutrients supplementation at school. Unfortunately, investment in education is very expensive and the returns on the investment often take many years to realize. Consequently, funds for education in many developing countries are inadequate. For example, in most developing countries, now, education. investment in education and healthcare.
Mhm.
One of the most suitable and fast way to move away from poverty is education.
Yeah.
Because education gives you the flexibility to learn,
Yeah.
to unlearn, to relearn. So it means you can get better because you are equipped for whatever will happen over the future. And that makes you employable.
Yeah.
So it's not going to make you rich, but it will give you different solutions to how to become better in life.
Yeah.
And when you are employable, then the rest becomes story. So that's what education will do. Then healthcare. A better health facility, a better healthcare makes you agile, physical,
Yeah.
and makes you to have the ability, the mental strength, the physical and mental strength to carry on with life endeavors, to carry on with life challenges. But if you don't have a sound health, you can't even work. Then how do you want to beat poverty? So you need healthcare, you need education to beat poverty. Is it clear? It is reckoned that in many developing countries, every additional year of education can increase a person's future income by an average of 10%. So basically, healthcare, education would improve life chances and makes you to be employable. And if you're employable, you have income, you can afford the basic needs.
Yeah.
Is it clear? Any question about that? So that ends government. And okay, we have the multiple choice questions. So they said the median income in an EU country is 19,400. Which of the following income is below the relative poverty line? If the median is 19,400. Why did you choose C?
Why did I choose C? Because it's the lowest out of them all.
Yeah, so you can consider 13 as relative.
Yeah, because it's still
Above, yeah, so
yeah.
it's C. Good. Question 2. Will increase income inequality. What is income inequality? The gap between the rich and the poor continues to increase. Okay.
So to fix that, which one of these would
Will
increase it?
Will increase the gap between the rich and the poor instead of reducing it.
Oh, is it a cut in state benefits?
Now let's take it one at a time. A fall in regressive tax. If regressive taxes fall, it reduces the burden on the poor. That means the poor will be paying less on spending, which is good. It can also reduce the gap between the rich and the poor. A more progressive tax system that takes the tax burden to the poor, to the rich, which is also going to be, because as soon as the tax burden increases for the rich, government revenue would increase, and government could be able to spread these things for social benefits. The gap between the rich and the poor would reduce. A fall in GDP per capita. A fall in GDP per capita means that, what is GDP per capita? GDP per capita is GDP divided by the population. So if the GDP per capita falls, it means the income level is increasing. The income level is increasing as a result of, if the GDP per capita is increasing, it is basically for those who are rich. But if it is falling, that means it's being spread across. So that reduces the gap between the rich and the poor. A cut in tax in state benefits. If government cuts social benefits, this reduces income level. As a result of that, the gap between the rich and the poor widens. So the answer is D. Is it clear? That's chapter 30.